People like to think compounding is some gentle, friendly force. Slow, steady, benevolent. That's because they've only seen the polite side of it. Compounding is not polite. It's ruthless. It's asymmetrical. It doesn't care about your feelings, your intentions, or your intelligence. It rewards consistency and punishes interruption. And when you introduce leverage, haste, or stupidity into the equation, compounding turns from your greatest ally into your executioner. That's the part people don't like to talk about. That's the part even Warren had a healthy fear of. Let me be clear about something from the outset. Compounding is not magic. It's arithmetic sustained over time. The magic people perceive comes from their inability to think exponentially. Human brains are linear machines trying to navigate a nonlinear world. That mismatch causes endless confusion, especially around money. The trick, if you want to call it that, is not discovering compounding. Everyone knows it exists. The trick is surviving it. Most people don't. They interrupt it, sabotage it, or weaponize it against themselves. Warren and I understood early on that compounding works both ways. Small advantages sustained become enormous. Small disadvantages sustained become catastrophic. That insight guided almost every major decision we made. We didn't chase maximum returns. We chased durability. We didn't optimize for brilliance. We optimized for survivability. That's the part that looks timid to outsiders and genius in hindsight. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The biggest enemy of compounding is not bad luck. It's human behavior. People cannot stand waiting. They cannot stand volatility. They cannot stand looking wrong temporarily. Compounding requires all three. It requires time, tolerance, and temperament. Miss any one of those, and the whole structure collapses. When people talk about compounding, they usually show you a chart that goes gently upward. What they don't show you are the long, flat periods, the gut-wrenching drawdowns, the years where nothing seems to happen. Those periods are not bugs in the system. They are the system. If you can't endure them, you don't get the payoff. Now let me explain the part that scares sensible people. Compounding magnifies errors faster than successes when leverage is involved. This is where fear is not only rational, it's necessary. Leverage turns volatility into destiny. A 50% loss does not require a 50% gain to recover. It requires 100%. That's arithmetic, not opinion. And if leverage forces you to sell at the bottom, compounding locks in the loss permanently. We watched brilliant people destroy themselves this way. They were right about the long-term prospects, but wrong about timing, liquidity, or human behavior. Compounding did not forgive them. It never does. It doesn't care how smart you are. It only cares whether you stayed alive in the game. That's why Warren always emphasized staying solvent, not maximizing returns, not being clever, staying solvent. You can't compound if you're wiped out. You can't benefit from being right eventually if you're forced out early. This is why the fear of leverage was not cowardice. It was wisdom. Another thing people misunderstand is the role of rate versus duration. Everyone obsesses over the rate of return. They ask, what's the annual percentage? They should be asking, how long can this continue? A slightly lower rate sustained for much longer will always beat a higher rate that blows up early. Time is the dominant variable. Rate is secondary. I've seen people abandon wonderful investments because they weren't compounding fast enough for their taste. They wanted excitement. They wanted acceleration. They wanted proof that something was happening. So they traded a durable 12-15% for a fragile 30%. The 30% looked better, right until it went to zero. Compounding punishes impatience harshly. The real compounding trick, the one people miss, is minimizing interruptions, taxes, fees, turnover, panic selling, strategy change, ego-driven decisions. These are all interruptions. Each one resets the clock. Each one reduces the final outcome by more than people realize. Compounding hates interference. We structured our lives and investments to minimize forced decisions. That's not an accident. Forced decisions are where stupidity enters. If you have to act because of margin calls, redemptions, deadlines, or social pressure, you're no longer compounding. You're reacting. Reaction is the enemy of exponential growth. Another underappreciated aspect is psychological compounding. Habits compound. Reputations compound. Trust compounds. So does stupidity. If you train yourself to act rashly, that tendency strengthens. If you train yourself to wait, that discipline compounds too. People think discipline is static. It's not. It's cumulative. Warren feared the misuse of compounding far more than he admired its upside. That's because he understood human nature. He knew that success breeds overconfidence, and overconfidence invites leverage, and leverage turns a long-term compounding machine into a short-term demolition device. He watched it happen over and over again. Look at the history of finance, and you'll see the same pattern repeated endlessly. Someone discovers compounding. They apply it conservatively and succeed. Then imitators arrive. They add leverage to speed things up. For a while, it works beautifully. Then volatility arrives, and the compounding reverses with brutal efficiency. The survivors are the ones who respected the danger from the beginning. People love stories about fortunes made quickly. They ignore the larger pile of stories about fortunes lost just as quickly. Compounding does not forgive arrogance. It magnifies it. The same force that turns modest success into vast wealth will turn modest mistakes into irreversible ruin if you let. Another subtle danger is over-optimization. People try to squeeze an extra percent here, an extra basis point there. In doing so, they add complexity, fragility, and risk. They forget that compounding rewards robustness more than precision. A system that works reasonably well across many environments will outperform a fragile system optimized for one narrow scenario. We preferred businesses that could stumble and still survive. We preferred strategies that could be wrong temporarily without being wrong permanently. That preference limited our upside slightly in good years and protected us enormously in bad ones. Over decades, the protection mattered far more. There's also a moral dimension to compounding that people overlook. Long-term compounding encourages long-term thinking. It aligns incentives toward sustainability rather than extraction. When you think in decades, you treat people, customers, and partners differently. Short-term thinking leads to exploitation. Long-term thinking leads to stewardship. The former burns itself out. The latter compounds. One of the great ironies is that the more you understand compounding, the more conservative you become. Not timid, conservative. You start to see how fragile progress is and how easy it is to undo years of effort with one bad decision. That awareness breeds caution, not fear. It makes you selective. It makes you patient. It makes you boring. People often ask why we didn't use more leverage when the returns were clearly there. The answer is simple: we didn't need to. When you're compounding at a decent rate for a very long time, adding risk to speed it up is unnecessary. It's like trying to improve a marathon time by sprinting the first mile. You might look impressive briefly, but you won't finish well. The compounding trick that scares sensible people is this: once it's working, the biggest risk is you. Your boredom, your ego, your desire to optimize, your impatience, your need to prove something. Most fortunes are not destroyed by external events. They are destroyed by internal impulses. If you want compounding to work for you, you must design your life to avoid stupidity. That means living below your means. Avoiding leverage you don't absolutely need. Choosing partners carefully. Keeping expenses low. Staying curious but skeptical. Reading more than you talk. Acting less than you think. It also means accepting that the rewards come late. Very late. Most of the money shows up in the final chapters, not the opening one. People quit right before the payoff because the progress feels slow. That's tragic, but it's also why the payoff exists at all. If everyone could endure the wait, the returns would disappear. Compounding is a jealous god. It demands loyalty. It punishes betrayal. You cannot flirt with it casually. You must commit and then get out of the way. Do that, and it will quietly do things for you that look miraculous to outsiders. Warren respected compounding enough to fear misusing it. That fear kept us disciplined. It kept us solvent. It kept us patient. And over time, it kept us very, very rich. Not because we chased compounding, but because we didn't interfere with it. That's the trick. Not exploiting compounding aggressively, but letting it work undisturbed. Most people will never do that, and that's why the results remain extraordinary.